Hey guys, it's Miss McCrae. I'm going to do a quick video on the Reformation today. It shouldn't take too much time for you, and I'm only going to put a few questions and play pause it. If you're having any trouble with anything in Canvas or anything like that, please reach out to me so that I can assist you. Make sure that you take your notes because you never know where you're going to have to use them again. So let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to talk about the Reformation, and there will be two Reformations. There will be the Protestant Reformation, and there will be a Counter-Reformation, which counter means to impose. So you're going to have one group that's going to start this reform and another group that's going to try to counterbalance it. And so really quick, the word reform means to improve by change or removal of faults or abuses. And I'm going to tell you something, you already know this. The Catholic Church is going to have a lot of faults and abuses during this time. And so we're going to talk about it. Your essential question is, how did the Catholic Church struggle for power affect the Protestant Reformation? What is the Protestant Reformation? So the Protestant Reformation is a religious movement in the 1500s that split the Christian church in Western Europe. So you already have two churches that exist during this time, the Catholic and the Orthodox Church, which split in the Byzantine Empire and during the Holy Roman Empire in the Middle Ages. But now you're going to have another split that's going to even break away from the Catholic Church, which will be the Protestant churches. And it creates a lot of new branches of churches. So, the Protestant Reformation. Before we have to have reform, we have to talk about what some of the problems are. But I want you to take a look. This is a little bit of a blurry picture, and I'm going to put a good resource up that'll show you all of the branches of Protestantism. But if you look, you have Judaism, Jesus, the Catholic Church, there's going to be the Orthodox Church, the Great Schism, and then Martin Luther. You remember we learned in the Middle Ages that a schism is like a split. So before you can have reform, you have to talk about some problems. So what were the problems in the Catholic Church during the Renaissance? Well, here they are, the big three. There was corruption, there was abuse, and immorality. I want you to remember that the Catholic Church is supposed to be like the beacon of hope. It's supposed to exemplify everything that Jesus of Nazareth taught. It's supposed to be the example of Christianity, but they're going to do some things that aren't right. The church is going to spend too much money. Remember yesterday we talked about patrons. They're going to spend lavish amounts of money on painting churches or having gold statues in the church and things like that. They use taxes from peasants. They also use indulgences, and we'll talk about those in a second. So you get like St. Peter's Basilica. You get these gold, ornate, like elaborate designs in the church. Here, more gold. And Miss McCrae's actually been to some of these areas in Italy, and they are very beautiful, okay? All of this is very like tall, beautiful arches, and they're made of gold, and they have all this engraving and all that kind of stuff. But you shouldn't spend money on that, because in the church you're supposed to help others. So people are going to start to lose respect for the church. People are also going to be more educated, so they're going to question the church. Also, the church sold indulgences to people to pay for art projects. So an indulgence, we're going to talk about that in a second. And number 4, people started to become more loyal or identify with their nation more than the church, so being more loyal to their country. When we talk about an indulgence is going to be a pardon. And what a pardon means is like an excuse, or like, hey, you're going to get off the hook for this. And so it's a pardon that reduces time in purgatory. So really quick Catholicism lesson, very short, brief, not as explained as it probably could be, but here we go. Catholics believe that when you pass away, there's an area that you go to called purgatory. If you're, it's kind of like, it reminds me of Hindus with karma. And it's kind of like if God's not sure about whether you should go to heaven or hell, you go to purgatory, okay? And so purgatory is the time you spend where you can either, make better choices and you go to heaven, or you go to hell. It's like kind of a waiting area. It's a limbo. And so priests would tell people, if you pay this indulgence, then I will pray for your relative and they won't spend as much time in purgatory, or they won't go to hell. But who can make a decision like that? So that's why it's abusive. So here's this new guy that's going to pop up. All right, his name is Martin Luther. Okay, there is chocolate Martin Luther King Jr., and then there's vanilla Martin Luther. We are talking about vanilla Martin Luther, and Martin Luther King Jr. is actually named after Martin Luther because Martin Luther King Jr.'s father changed his name to Martin Luther because he respected Martin Luther, this guy, and his movement. And remember, Martin Luther King Jr. and his father were active in the civil rights movement. That's another story for another day, but I just want to clarify, not this guy, not yet. So, Martin Luther, German monk, protested against the Catholic Church, and he calls for change. He says, hey, y'all are doing a lot of stuff that's messed up. I don't like it, and I think other people should know. Also, he is going to gain momentum because people are going to support Martin Luther because people are more educated. So he starts a reformation, okay? And he's going to speak out. And the biggest, baddest thing that this man does is he is going to, in 1517, he is going to nail a list of 95 things that he thinks the Catholic Church is doing wrong. And he nails it. It's like on a piece of paper and everybody can see it. So I want you to think about this. When we want to make a point, we like write a big social media post and people start to share it and everybody's like, oh my goodness, have you read this post by so and so? This is how they feel, or this is what they said about the government, this is what they said about society. So like I want you to think about the 95 Thesis being equivalent to like this epic Instagram post by someone who's important or who has very valuable beliefs. So he nails it to a church door. Well, I want to remind you, everybody can read during this time. Not everybody, but a good amount of people can read during this time. So people start reading it. People start talking about it. But also there is an invention called the printing press that will spread the 95 Theses, okay? And so the 95 Theses is going to be a document that lists all the problems with the Catholic Church. So it's kind of like a roast fest. He's like, this is what y'all do wrong. Point number 1 gets all the way down to point 95. That's like a lot of points, okay? That's not a real photo. That's not a real picture of Martin Luther. It's just a photograph, like a reenactment. So like, remember they didn't have cameras back then. So let me give you some key points of the 95 Theses because I don't want you to read all of it, but you need to know it. So he says, God's grace can't be won by good works. It doesn't matter how many old ladies you help across the street. Doesn't matter. You got to like have a good relationship with Jesus Christ. Faith alone is needed to get into heaven. Jesus Christ is the head of the church, not the Pope. So your boy Martin Luther directly comes for the Pope. That is tough, okay? Also, he says people can interpret the Bible without a priest. Well, yeah, everybody can read, or people are starting to read, so they don't need a priest to read the Bible to them out loud at church because they can read the Bible for themselves, which is empowering if you think about it. Also, the Bible is going to be translated into German and eventually other languages. The Bible was originally written in Latin. Only the educated could read Latin. That's on purpose, okay? So those are your big 5 key points. How do people react to Martin Luther? Well, I'm going to tell you, people didn't like him. So Pope Leo X is going to excommunicate Luther. The word excommunicate means that he banishes him or he kicks him out. And he's like, you can't be in the Catholic Church. Honestly, you probably just need to leave. I don't know. His face looks like he would have a voice like that. Like, you need to leave. Number 2, his ideas continue to spread though. So a big thing is just because we try to squish a movement or we tell people like, hey, you need to leave or I don't like your ideas, that doesn't mean they don't spread. Examples, Jesus of Nazareth. Examples, the Buddha. Like just because you don't like it doesn't mean it doesn't gain momentum or like strength with people. By 1530, Lutheranism is official. So Lutheranism is going to become this official branch of Christianity, which Martin Luther actually did not want this to happen. He was like, nah, don't name anything after me, or like, I just want y'all to see that the Catholic Church is corrupt. So Charles V, who's the Holy Roman Empire or Emperor, also BFFs with the Pope, is going to summon him to the Diet of Worms, which pretty much means he puts him on trial. And then, of course, you know this is going to happen. The whole trial group is like, oh, you're an outlaw. You're a bad guy. So Charles V right here, he tries to suppress the Lutherans in Germany. He's like, listen, you better get in with me or you need to improve your behavior or you're going to be Catholics. But there are princes in Germany that don't agree with Charles V and they protest. And so that is where we get the word Protestants because they protest against the Catholic Church and they protest against Charles V, who's the Holy Roman Emperor. If you remember anything about Charlemagne, popes and Holy Roman emperors are besties for life, okay? So